My message to the country is this. We are a nation of immigrants, and America is an idea. Sure, there are a couple of burned cars and people are waving other countries' flags, but that's L.A. That's what L.A. is about. Dance like nobody's watching, love like you've never been hurt, and skateboard like your dad isn't in prison.
Voices blending, melodies ascending, harmony in the air. Our songs are never ending. In the barbershop we create magic. Brad and Jon show, yeah, it's pure classic. No instruments needed, just our vocal range. Notes flying high, it's our musical exchange. Tracy's station may try, but they can't compete. Our barbershop style, it can't be beat. Oh, the harmony of voices, so sweet. In the barbershop of life, our tunes will repeat. No need for instruments, no need for a band. Just the Brad and Jon show, the finest in the land.
Jon, what day of the week do you think it might be? What day of the week?
It's Friday, gotta get down on Friday. That's the same vocal tone that's used for Brad's top 3, I think, Brad.
Close, something like that. Okay, today's date is Friday, September 26th. And you know what that means, Jon?
What does it mean, Brad?
It means it's
time for the Jon Combest Top 3.
It is. It's time for the Jon Combest Top 3. Now, you may say, the top 3 of what? Well, every single day of his life, Jon puts together this incredible website that lists all these important things you should know about that's going on in the state of Missouri. Sometimes they are politically motivated. Sometimes they're just interesting stories. Sometimes they're just crazy, weird stuff, which I have a patent on now, CWS. But what he does is he puts these all together in his website, joncombest.com. You can go there very easily, and it's like the Drudge Report for the state of Missouri, the old Drudge Report before it got corporatized and turned into garbage. But it's all the top stuff you need to know. Now, what we do is Jon takes all these stories he posts every single day and he distills them down to 3 distinct important stories. We bring this guy in to moderate. Your name, sir?
I'm Casey Kasem.
And we start off with?
In third place,
Greater St. Louis Incorporated, the region's main business lobby, hired a brand spanking new CEO. A gentleman named Ron Kitchens. He is a Missouri State University graduate, and he has connections to the St. Louis area. His wife is from the St. Louis area. Brad, I bring this up because over the last 2 glorious years that you and I have done the show together, we've talked a lot about urban crime. We've talked a lot about economic development in the St. Louis area. And we talked this spring about how the former leader of Greater St. Louis Incorporated left for brighter pastures. The popular Jason Hall left for none other than Columbus, Ohio. Those are greener pastures for sure compared to St. Louis. Now you ask, who is Ron Kitchens? Well, he's 62 years old, and he has spent the last 3 years as CEO of the Chamber of Commerce of Wichita Falls, Texas. Now, Brad, usually I wouldn't include something about St. Louis development, economic development. I wouldn't include it on my website, joncombest.com, because in general, if it's not about state government or how federal government is affecting Missouri, I usually don't link to it. But there's a joyous little nugget in here. This piece was brought to us in the Post-Dispatch by Jacob Barker, by the way. Mr. Kitchen formerly was a staffer in his younger days for Senator John Danforth. So that's a blast from the past, right? It makes sense, though, because this guy's 62 years old. So when he was a young pup, John Danforth and Kit Bond would have been Missouri's 2 senators. So we've talked before, Brad. Greater St. Louis Incorporated even attracted freedom-loving Tim Brinker from Franklin County to leave his post and go to Greater St. Louis Incorporated. And Brad, the final nugget I would add to this is what I think is telling about how serious Greater St. Louis Inc. keeps their leadership is that, or how seriously they take their leadership. I think it would have been really easy for Greater St. Louis Incorporated to go out and say, you know, it's probably time for a real diversity hire. Let's go find someone with a certain skin tone. Let's go find someone with a particular orientation, or at least a woman, to lead this business group. But they found a 62-year-old white man. It would seem as though qualifications are pretty important to Greater St. Louis Inc. these days.
John, I have a question for you. I thought Tim Brinker was the head dude there. No, he hasn't been. He never has been. He's been one of the guys that leads. Brinker's one of the guys that leads government relations, government interactions, things like that. Yeah, Brinker was never the top guy at Greater St. Louis Inc. I thought he was. Why would you?
He absolutely was not.
Why would you leave county executive or whatever he was managing? They have it different in Franklin County. Why would he leave that job to not be the head honcho? I thought he was.
I think he's, and we've discussed it, Brad Diedem-Tots. We've discussed this many times on the show. And my opinion remains the same as it was the multiple times we discussed this, which is Tim Brinker knows that there's folks in Franklin County, including but not limited to Dave Schatz, who can do the presiding commissioner job just as well as Tim could. But who would want the St. Louis City job and do as good of a job orchestrating, building frameworks with local governments like Tim Brinker? Probably not many. I think Tim Brinker was called to serve, and he's doing what's right for the region.
You know, here once again, you elect somebody, you go out and you shake hands, you kiss babies, you raise money, and then you essentially defy the goodwill of the citizens by leaving your position.
Should people pay that money back, Brad? Should somebody propose a rule, the Hildebrand rule?
Yes.
Where if you leave an office early,
yes,
you have to reimburse taxpayers.
Right. Well, not only that, you have to give back your campaign money. Whoever donated to your campaign, you have to give your.
That's feasible.
You have to give campaign money back, and not only that, you have to unkiss all those babies. I don't know how you do that.
What about the baby's mothers?
You'd have to kiss them.
I do love kissing a baby's mother.
Okay, you ready for number 2?
Yeah, let's do it.
Up a notch to number 2.
Across the state in Kansas City, our friend Pete Mundo, he's had a big week. He had Catherine Hanaway on earlier this week, and he had his regularly scheduled interview with KC Mayor Quinton Lucas yesterday. You and I have spent a lot of time praising Quinton Lucas for going into the proverbial lion's den and taking hard questions from Pete. One of the topics, I should say, the first topic that Pete brought up with Mayor Lucas was this horrific video on social media. Brad, I have to admit, I didn't watch it until this morning. Did you happen to see a video from a rap concert in Kansas City this week?
I did not.
Okay. There is a young scholar who turns out to be 14 years old at a rap concert in Kansas City who has a dispute with a 66-year-old security guard. Apparently, the security guard was letting this young scholar know that the young scholar couldn't go to this particular region of the concert and needed to go back to where his ticket was. And the 14-year-old proceeded to pummel the 66-year-old and sent him to the hospital. Now, the injuries are not life-threatening. This older gentleman was already suffering from glaucoma and now has contusions and damage to his head, thanks to this young man. And Quinton Lucas went on Pete's show, and Quinton seems to have had enough, and he seems to think that there's a solution here. Here's what Lucas says, abridged. He says, we have a huge problem with youth violence. And according to Quinton Lucas, quote, it goes to family court. And Lucas says that when a 14-year-old goes and pummels a 66-year-old security guard just doing his job, that young man is just put in family court, Brad. And Quinton Lucas, the Democrat mayor of Kansas City, says we need to have real consequences for these people. He says, quote, they need to understand the consequences, the seriousness of these consequences. More people need to see that as a deterrent effect. And Quinton Lucas goes on to say that the state legislature has to do something about this. And he brings up a pretty good point, Brad. If you were a 17-year-old and your kid, he says, quote, if your kid gets a 12-pack of Coors Light and gets busted with it, they're going through counseling. There's a full program if a kid gets caught with guns. There's a full program that they go through. But if you're 14 and you beat down an old man, well, you just go home and say to mom, well, I got in a little trouble at the concert today, mom. So what will the state legislature do about this, Brad? I bet you some legislators in the Kansas City area are going to look at this and say, Quinton Lucas is right. We've got to do something for some of these violent young scholars and have some real consequences for them.
A little background for people who don't know the lay of the land. And John, I'm just sort of giving the lay of the land because I think it's important. Pete Mundo is a very popular conservative talk show host in Kansas City, correct?
Yeah, exactly right, Brad.
Right. And the mayor of Kansas City is a liberal Democrat. And the reason I bring that up is because how many times do you think Tashara Jones was on 97.1 or Tracy's Station or the Refugee Station or any of those, or KMOX? How many times do you think Tashara Jones was on any of those conservative radio stations?
0.0.
And from what I've never listened to, well, I actually have listened to a couple and obviously I can't hear the station here in St. Louis, but I've listened to a couple, the air checks of it, and I think Mayor Q does a real good job on KCMO. You've listened to it before, right?
Yeah, I mean, I read the transcripts every time he's on there with Pete, and then I actually listen to some of the clips. Yeah, and I think, by the way, Quinton Lucas would push back and say he's a moderate to liberal Democrat, but the point is still taken. And he goes on there every week, and Pete is like, Mayor, why are we having so many murders? What are you doing about this? And I would point out, Brad, what you'll love about this, a little factoid from this one, was that apparently after this concert, in the concert was an artist named NBA Youngboy. Yes, that's not a typo. There's a rapper named NBA Youngboy. And I guess the city had proclaimed after sometime this week that it was NBA Youngboy Day. And Pete's like, don't you think, Mr. Mayor, that might not be a good idea naming a concert after him, after not only NBA Youngboy's own personal crimes, but also after what happens at a concert? And Quinton Lucas said, very honestly, yeah, there's pretty much no way that I could read every resolution that comes to my desk. If I sign a proclamation that says that it's so-and-so day in Kansas City, I've probably never even seen it.
Which reminds me, I sent you the story. Yesterday we had the story of, what was it, the presidential, it's a new thing in the White House, was in the West Wing or something like that, the Presidential Walk of Fame, and they have all the pictures of the president, and it goes, from 1 to 47, and 45 is Trump, 46 is Biden, and it's got these pictures, but instead of a picture, what is it, John? You didn't believe me when I said this on the air yesterday. What is it a picture
It's
of?
an auto pen, and you sent me the picture of it yesterday, Brad.
Yes. And to give you an idea, it wasn't a Fox News story I sent you. I sent you the CNN story. So
of all places, the Clinton News Network even admits it.
And then the 47th picture is Trump again, which I think is really funny. Look, hands off to Mayor Q, or hats off, not hands off.
Hands off, and no. Hands off is how is Joe Biden signs bills.
Yes,
but hats off is what you
hats
do for
off to Mayor Q because of the fact that he's willing to go on a conservative station and take these kind of questions and talk to the people. I've said it before, John. If I were a Democrat, I'd be calling up Annie Fry and Mark Cox and Mark Reardon and asking them, hey, can I come on your show? Because I just don't, because first off, I think you may have some people who listen to those stations who may be sort of on the fence, who may not be dyed-in-the-wool, super duper, conservative, nutbags, to the point where somebody may say, you know what, I sort of like this guy or gal. You know what I'm saying, John?
I don't know. I think the way you're talking, Brad, you would invite the discharged and dismissed former head of the St. Louis County Democratic Central Committee to call you at 7:45, and then he flakes.
Well, no, he invited himself.
Oh, that's right,
that's right.
Brad. He invited himself.
Right. He said,
sought you out for an interview before flaking on us. That's right, Brad. Good correction there.
And by the way, I don't know if you've heard this or not, but the Democrats this weekend are having a fundraiser. And what they're
are they? What's it for, Brad? Is it for beard oil?
No, they're inviting a bunch of dudes with long beards, and it's going to be called the Democratic Beard Tugging Contest. And you have to pay $10 to tug on some dude's beard. So and all money goes toward the campaign fund for Democratic senators Democratic politicians in the state of Missouri. You ready for number one, John?
Yeah, let's do it.
The number one.
She wants the best of both worlds, and honey, I know what it's worth. Brad, where are you at on Sammy Hagar?
You know, I was never a huge Sammy Hagar. I loved I Can't Drive 55. I thought that was a great song. There's all sorts of interesting stories. Did you ever hear the story how he ended up with Van Halen?
No, I didn't hear that story.
Well, you do your thing, and then I'll tell you the Sammy Hagar story.
And I'm with you, by the way, on Sammy Hagar. I was and remain a David Lee Roth guy. It broke my heart when all that stuff happened with Van Halen. I was in first and second grade, and I really disliked Sammy Hagar coming in. But, whatever. That's neither here nor there. I bring up Sammy, though, a St. Louis legend. He's done so many concerts here because his song was the best of both worlds. I think that was the first hit he had with Van Halen as a group. And the best of both worlds is what Governor Mike Kehoe might get with redistricting. Yesterday, you and I discussed the fact that I think, based on the confidence of intelligent Democrats, guys like Jack Cardetti and others, they seem to genuinely believe that the redistricting map will get thrown out in court, or worst case scenario for them, they have to spend a bunch of money at the polls and voters reject the new congressional map. Mike Kehoe, Brad, said yesterday that he would be signing the new congressional map, approving the new congressional map, in a private bill signing ceremony on Sunday. There's going to be neither pomp nor circumstance when he signs it, but he's going to sign it on Sunday and expect court challenges. He pretty much says, I'm going to sign it and let the courts decide. So to me, Mike Kehoe has the best of both worlds. He doesn't have to deal with an angry electorate who could be, quote unquote, real mad, like a fired up Democrat electorate that's real mad about the congressional maps. He wouldn't have to lose Emanuel Cleaver, who, let's face it, has gotten money for the Kansas City area when there have been Democratic presidents. He wouldn't have to lose Cleaver, and he can still go to Donald Trump with a straight face and say, Mr. President, I did everything I could to help you. These dang liberal judges put the ixnay on our map. Can you believe it? I can't believe it either. Or he can say, if voters throw it out, Mr. President, I did my best, but the Democrats spent all that out-of-state money here and beat it. Can you believe that? Now, Kehoe wouldn't speak in such a whiny term, but you get the gist of what I'm saying, Brad. Kehoe has the best of both worlds. He can sign the bill and stay on Trump's good side and not have to worry about Trump taking aim at him down the road. And then, on the other hand, doesn't really have to deal with the consequences of a new map.
John, here once again, you're pointing up that, and I know you and I have sort of disagreed, and you said you have some friends or listen to the show who disagreed on this. I've had two friends who commented to me that say that Mike Kehoe has disappeared. You don't see him anymore. And a perfect example of this is that instead of signing this bill on Sunday in a private ceremony, he should be starting out on Sunday morning and driving to each of the eight congressional districts, and he should be signing part of his signature in each of those 8 congressional districts.
Like one letter in every. I think you should do it in a plane. He knows a lot of guys that are pilots. Bob Onder could fly him. But you're right, Brent. Maybe he could do the letter M and I down in Southwest Missouri, and then go over to the boot heel and do K-E.
Right,
you know what I'm saying?
Right, and show some.
And when you could go to downtown St. Louis, that's when you want to sign the hoe.
Right. Oh, yeah. Okay. Why is he doing this in private on Sunday? What's the reason?
It's a good question, Brad. And the answer is generally when a governor signs something where he doesn't want a lot of pomp and circumstance, he'll make a note that he's doing it behind closed doors. Now, when you're signing a bill that recognizes the disease that little Jimmy had that took his right pinky toenail, and you want to flood the governor's office with 100 advocates, then you sign it in public before the cameras and you use 14 different pens so everybody gets to take one home. But when you do something that's like, hey, this is a necessary order of business, we need to knock this out, you do it in a closed door thing, and you're able to say, look, we're not trying to make a big showy deal about this. We're just going about the process of governing here.
Right. On Sunday when nobody's watching, right?
Yeah. Well, GodSquad.cloud is watching,
Hey,
but I don't know who else is watching on Sunday.
by the way, John, it's supposedly Tuesday. The government's going to shut down. If they don't, this is on the national level. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I have an interesting observation on that. Do you know what they call the government shutdown, which we already have?
What do they call it?
Saturday and Sunday.
Oh, there you go. That's a good one, Brad. I like that one.
That's the government shutdown.
We already have a government shutdown.
Right, it happens.
Now, will that affect your ability to go to Warren County and be talked down to?
Well,
or I guess that's just a county.
That's
office,
a county.
right?
That's a county. Okay, time for us to take a break. The most important Brad's top 3 are coming up. And it's amazing how Brad and John think together. Okay, think alike.